Let's talk about what payday looks like as a small business owner. Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today's video is a little different than my normal content. It is not a studio vlog, but I'm so excited to be filming this video. I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes on my finances as a small business owner and how I pay myself as a small business owner and allocate my funds and budget. So I want to start off by saying that my fiance Sean is in charge of Payday and he currently allocates the funds on my payday, which is every other Saturday, but I will get into that. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to be saying but just know it's Sean. Shout out to you, Sean. I love you. So if you're also self-employed and you're unsure of how to manage your finances, I will be showing you exactly what I do in case you want to follow the same method. It's worked great so far. It's gonna be a full lesson here, so you might want to grab a coffee, grab a notepad and a pen or a laptop. It might be helpful to take notes. We don't follow a traditional accounting system, so that's why it might seem like, okay, I need to write this down because what is she talking about? So I want to start off by saying this method that I currently use, I've been doing for about 1.5 years. And before that, I just had my business checking account. I had money come into the account, anything I made, and money go out of that account, anything I spent, and then I allocated a percentage for taxes. So that's how I was doing my finances for a couple of years. So the method that we primarily follow is a Profit First method by Mike Michalowicz, and it's from his book Profit First. And this method is great for budgeting and really knowing your finances and keeping track of what you can afford. So let me first explain a little bit about Profit First and just what it is. So in traditional accounting, the formula is revenue minus expenses equals profit, but with Profit First, the formula and the idea is revenue minus profit equals expenses. Now this method ensures that I'm paying myself fairly and I'm not letting expenses dictate my business's financial health. It's important to spend what you can currently afford and not what you're hoping to one day afford. In other words, you don't want to overspend, and this method is great for budgeting. The 4 areas that I allocate funds to is profit, owner's pay, expenses, and taxes. And following the Profit First method, I have a separate bank account for each one of those areas. So first off, I have a business checking account. I use this account for my revenue and expenses. So anything the business makes goes into my business checking, and anything the business spends goes out of my business checking. So business checking is for revenue and expenses. Then I have a business savings for my taxes. I have a personal savings for my profit, and I have a personal checking for my owner's pay. And you may be asking, what's the difference between owner's pay and profit? Profit is essentially money that the business is making and excess money that the business has. And I personally put the business's profit into a high yield savings account, and I use it for big ticket items. So if I need a new laptop, if I need a new camera, something unexpected, a big expense comes up, I take from that instead of taking right out of my business checking. And then owner's pay is essentially my paycheck, and I use it for personal expenses. Now let's look at what happens on payday, where the money goes, what percentage of what goes where. And every 2 weeks I go through the same process to distribute the money that my business has earned. And I do this on Saturday since no deposits are going into my account, so it won't mess anything up. I won't miss anything. It's just like a stagnant day with the account, so it's a good time to do this. So I include the time period of 2 Saturdays before up to the Friday before the Saturday that I'm paying myself. And here's the exact breakdown. So I start with revenue. I take everything that has gone into my business checking account over those last 2 weeks, and I subtract cost of goods sold from that. It's giving me the real earnings after all the materials that went into those items are accounted for. So I'll be calling that real revenue. And this step isn't necessarily part of the Profit First method. It's just something that I do because I'm a profit-based business, and so it makes the most sense to use real revenue. Then comes transferring all the money into the 4 accounts that I was talking about. So I take 9% of the real revenue for my profit portion, and I put that into my personal savings account, which, if you recall, that's where I put profit. So profit goes into my personal savings, and this ensures that I'm always building profit intentionally. Then I take 18% of the real revenue for taxes. Make sure you're setting money aside from taxes. You don't want any surprises when tax season comes and you're like, where's the money that I need to pay for taxes? You should be taking that out and allocating for that throughout the year. Then I take 42% of the real revenue as my owner's pay, and I put it into my personal checking. That is essentially my paycheck. And the remaining 31% stays into my business checking account to cover expenses. And if you recall, I was saying earlier, my business checking is for my revenue and expenses. So money in and money out is my business checking. So I've been using this method for about 1.5 years now, and it's worked really well for me and the business, but we have played around with the percentages a little bit. So when I first started, I used slightly different percentages. I did 5% for profit, 16% for taxes, 42% for owner's pay, and 37% for expenses. But as we saw how everything played out, we adjusted those percentages. So I've settled on having my tax allocation be 18%, so the tax percentage went up. And it's just more realistic based on my income after expenses. I owe about 18% in taxes, but it also gives me a buffer just to be sure I have enough set aside for taxes. It's better to over allocate than under allocate for taxes. I also noticed that my business checking balance was steadily growing, and that's the account that has my expenses. So what that meant is I was taking too high of a percentage for my expenses, so I ended up lowering the percentage that I needed for expenses in that account. And I shifted more money into my profit account. And these tweaks have helped me maintain financial stability and ensure that the business is still growing. Following this system has been really good for me in the business. It's ensuring that I'm always making profit, I'm never falling behind on taxes, and I'm consistently paying myself for the work that I'm putting into the business. And I feel like the biggest thing with this method is the percentage that is allocated for expenses. By keeping a set percentage for expenses, I'm ensuring that I'm not overspending and just draining my business checking account. So that's where I find the most value, is the budgeting aspect of this and just making sure, you know, you're not overspending, you're making a profit, you're paying yourself fairly. It's been great so far. And if you are a small business struggling to figure out your finances or you don't know where to start, I really do recommend this method. It does require some work. You need to open a bunch of accounts. We have 4 accounts, like I said. Some banks are a little like, with how many accounts you can open, but we've had no issues, so that's been really good. And it obviously requires you to sit down and transfer the funds, you know, every couple of weeks accordingly and take those percentages, calculating the cost of goods sold of the items you sold. So there is some work that needs to go into it, but I do think it's worth it and it will help your business in the long run. And I'm gonna link some resources in the description to help you get started on following this method if you so choose. I'll link the book as well in the description. This video is in no way sponsored by anything or anyone. It's truly just the method we follow, and I wanted to share it. Like I said at the beginning, it's not what we always did. I used to just have my business checking, money came in, money went out, set aside some for taxes. And honestly, that's a great way to start too, because it's lower stress. But I do recommend eventually going to this method. But you know, it's just my advice and take it with a grain of salt. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have questions, and yeah, I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.
Even